Do you remember when a few coins in your pocket could turn an ordinary downtown shopping trip into an adventure? Before giant discount stores and online carts, there was the five and dime, packed with little things you never knew you needed. You might have called it Woolworth's, Kresge's, McCrory's, Grant's, Ben Franklin, G.C. Murphy, or simply the dime store. The names differed from town to town, but for millions of Americans, walking through those doors became part of growing up. There were toys to study, candy to choose, counters to spin around, and smells that seemed to belong nowhere else. Some memories were small enough to fit inside a brown paper bag, yet they have lasted for more than half a century. So come back downtown for a while and see how many of these 15 five and dime memories still feel familiar. 1. The red and gold storefront and display windows. Long before you entered, the store was already trying to stop you on the sidewalk with those big, street-facing windows. In many downtowns, the five and dime sat right among the drugstore, department store, shoe shop, and local movie theater. Woolworth became especially recognizable for its red and gold identity, but every town seemed to know its own familiar variety store sign. The display windows could make an ordinary Main Street storefront feel almost theatrical, especially to a child walking beside a parent. You could slow down outside and inspect toys, household goods, seasonal decorations, or whatever the store wanted everyone talking about. At Christmas, those windows became even harder to pass because the merchandise seemed brighter and more exciting than usual. For children, the window was often the first negotiation of the shopping trip. Could we please go inside for just a minute? And once that door opened, the experience changed from something you could see through glass into something you could hear and smell. 2. The creaky floors and high ceilings. Older downtown locations could feel completely different from the bright, standardized retail spaces that eventually replaced many of them. Under your shoes might be narrow wooden floorboards, darkened by years of traffic and treatments used to maintain the floor and control dust. Those boards had their own soundtrack, with footsteps, squeaks, and the steady movement of shoppers traveling from counter to counter. Look upward, and some older stores had high ceilings, decorative pressed tin panels, and hanging lights far above the merchandise. By the 1960s and 1970s, remodeled locations increasingly used tile floors, fluorescent lighting, and more open, self-service layouts. That means no single five and dime looked exactly the same, and the store you remember depended greatly on when and where you shopped. But the older downtown stores had a texture that was difficult to mistake once you had spent enough Saturdays walking their aisles. Even decades later, a creaking wooden floor can bring back the feeling of following your mother through a crowded variety store. 3. The warm nut warmer near the entrance. Some five and dimes greeted you with something stronger than a sign or a display window: the smell of warm roasted nuts. Glass-fronted warmers near the entrance could hold salted Spanish peanuts or cashews, turning the doorway into an aromatic advertisement. That smell mixed with everything else inside the store, from cosmetics and floor treatments to popcorn and food from the lunch counter. It was not the carefully designed fragrance of a modern retail chain. It was simply the accumulated smell of a busy store. For children, the nut warmer was another temptation, arriving before they had even reached the toy or candy departments. A small purchase could be handed over warm, making the trip feel less like an errand and more like an occasion. Not every store had the same setup, but where these warmers existed, customers often remembered them long after forgetting individual purchases. Sometimes nostalgia begins with a photograph, but sometimes all it takes is the imagined smell of warm peanuts near a downtown doorway. 4. The glass bins and wooden display tables. Shopping did not always mean pulling a sealed package from a perfectly uniform shelf and dropping it into a giant cart. Older variety stores could display small merchandise in wooden tables divided by glass partitions, creating dozens of miniature compartments to explore. Buttons, notions, inexpensive household pieces, novelties, and other small goods could sit almost like specimens arranged for inspection. The glass made everything visible, while still giving the counter a sense of order that open piles could never quite manage. Children naturally wanted to look into every compartment, even when they had no idea what half the objects were used for. In earlier layouts, clerks played a larger role behind counters, while later stores increasingly adopted open self-service racks and pegboard aisles. That gradual change is one reason memories of the 5 and dime can differ so much between someone raised in the 1950s and someone raised later. But those glass-divided counters remain one of the clearest visual reminders of an era when inexpensive merchandise could still feel carefully presented. 5. The allowance toy counter. For a child with coins in a pocket, the toy area could become the most important few square feet in the entire store. You did not need a birthday or Christmas to dream about something there, because many little toys were designed for modest budgets. There might be a die-cut sheet balsa glider in a long paper sleeve, a bag of green plastic army men, metal jacks, or a yo-yo, paper dolls, simple molded toys, silly putty, and other inexpensive novelties could keep a child studying the choices far longer than expected. The real excitement was often not receiving the toy, but choosing it yourself with money you had saved or been allowed to spend. Every coin mattered, so you compared possibilities, changed your mind, counted again, and tried to make your tiny budget stretch. The phrase 5 and dime had survived long after most merchandise literally cost 5 or 10 cents, so prices should not be romanticized. Still, pocket change retained enough purchasing power that a child could walk in with a modest amount and leave carrying a real treasure. That small independence is difficult to reproduce today. Your own money, your own decision, and your own little paper bag. 6. Penny candy in a brown paper sack. Then there was the candy, one of the easiest places for a child to turn a handful of change into immediate happiness. Glass cases could hold colorful choices such as jawbreakers, candy corn, nonpareils, Necco wafers, bridge mix, or wax lips. Some candy was sold by weight rather than as the standardized single packages that dominate checkout lanes today. A clerk could reach in with a metal scoop, weigh the selection, and pour it into a small brown paper sack. The process itself was part of the pleasure, because you watched your choice move from the case to the scale to your hands. The candy counter also taught an important childhood lesson. When your money was limited, choosing one thing meant leaving another behind. You could stare at the glass, reconsider everything, and somehow make a decision involving only a few coins feel enormously important. The bag might be empty before you reached home, but the ritual of choosing from that crowded candy case could stay with you forever. 7. The squeaking comic book spinner rack. While a parent searched for practical household items, a child could disappear emotionally into a wire rack filled with comic books. The tall, revolving spinner invited you to turn it, stop it, examine a cover, and then give it another squeaking rotation. Depending on the year, you might see titles from DC, Marvel, Dell, Gold Key, and other publishers staring outward from the wire pockets. Comic prices changed across the decades, but the attraction remained the same. Dozens of adventures compressed into one narrow corner of the store. You did not necessarily buy one every time, which made browsing almost as important as owning. A parent could finish several errands while you remained perfectly content studying covers and deciding which story looked impossible to resist. Those racks were wonderfully inefficient by modern standards because you had to rotate the entire thing just to discover what was on the other side. And perhaps that was part of the fun. Shopping was not a search result, it was something you physically explored. 8. The lunch counter and soda fountain. For many shoppers, the most beloved part of a large 5 and dime was not merchandise at all, but the lunch counter. Picture a Formica counter edged in metal, a row of round vinyl stools, and stainless steel equipment working behind the employees. You might stop for a sandwich, a soda, ice cream, or something from the grill before continuing the afternoon's shopping. The stools themselves were irresistible to children, especially the swivel kind that made sitting still far more difficult than it should have been. Milkshake mixers, covered desserts, plates sliding across the counter, and conversation from neighboring customers created a little restaurant inside the store. Large locations could offer substantial food service, while smaller stores might have a compact fountain or no full lunch counter at all. But this memory also carries a history that cannot be separated from the nostalgia. In the Jim Crow South, lunch counters were strictly segregated. Black customers could buy merchandise in the store, but were barred from equal-seated service at the counter. On February 1, 1960, 4 black college students sat at a Woolworth counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, and demanded equal service. Their nonviolent sit-in helped ignite a movement that made the American lunch counter not only a place of memory, but a place of change. Remembering these counters fully means remembering both the ordinary meals shared there and the Americans who challenged the injustice built around them. 9. Popping a balloon for a banana split. Some memories were not everyday features of every dime store, but promotions so memorable that people talked about them for years. At Woolworth and Kresge locations, customers could encounter a banana split promotion involving balloons with hidden prices waiting inside. The fun came from popping a balloon and discovering what price you would pay for the treat. A banana split was already exciting to a child, but turning the price into a little game made the experience even better. It added noise and anticipation to a lunch counter already full of clattering dishes, spinning stools, conversation, and sweet smells. This was a chain promotion rather than a universal ritual at every independent 5 and dime, so not everyone will remember seeing it. But those who do may remember the suspense more clearly than the exact amount they eventually paid. It is the kind of wonderfully unnecessary retail theater that made an ordinary afternoon feel like something worth telling your friends about. 10. The live pet department. Modern shoppers would be surprised by how naturally live animals could appear among the ordinary merchandise in some variety stores. A child might discover parakeets or canaries in cages, goldfish, or small baby turtles sold as inexpensive pets. The turtles are especially tied to memories of little plastic lagoon-style habitats that seem astonishingly simple by today's expectations. You could stand there watching the animals, while the adult who brought you tried to continue with the actual purpose of the shopping trip. Naturally, seeing a tiny turtle or colorful bird created the next predictable question: could we take one home? Not every store carried animals, and claims about exotic creatures appearing everywhere should be treated as nostalgia exaggeration rather than normal practice. But ordinary small pets were real enough to make the pet section one of the strangest 5 and dime memories from a modern perspective. It was another example of how variety stores lived up to their name. You truly never knew what the next department might contain. 11. The sewing notions and pattern wall. Not everything in the 5 and dime was designed to make children beg for one more purchase. For many households, the notions department was practical, familiar, and connected directly to the everyday work of maintaining clothes and making things at home. Rows of thread could create a rainbow of small spools, surrounded by zippers, buttons, rick-rack, needles, and other sewing supplies. Pattern cabinets from names such as Simplicity and McCall's gave shoppers a place to browse possibilities before choosing what to make. To a bored child, this section could seem endless, especially when an adult was determined to find exactly the right thread or button. But years later, those same displays can become powerful memories of mothers, grandmothers, and relatives who repaired, altered, or made clothing themselves. The five and dime worked because it mixed pleasure with practicality. Candy might be only a few aisles from something needed to mend a shirt. That mixture made the store part toy chest, part pantry, part sewing box, and part neighborhood meeting place. 12. The photo booth in the back corner. Before everyone carried a camera in a pocket, a curtained photo booth could turn a shopping trip into a tiny event. You squeezed inside, adjusted yourself on the seat, fed in your coins, and tried to be ready when the machine began taking pictures. Friends could crowd together, siblings could make faces, and teenagers could capture a moment without needing anyone else to hold a camera. Afterward came the wait, because the machine did not instantly place a perfect digital image on a screen. The reward was a vertical strip of small photographs, black and white in earlier years and increasingly available in color later on. Those strips could end up in wallets, drawers, scrapbooks, or between the pages of something kept for decades. Not every five and dime had a booth, but stores that did offered something beyond merchandise, a way to take part of the afternoon home. A faded photo strip can preserve hairstyles, clothes, friendships, and expressions long after the store where it was taken has disappeared. 13. The boxed Halloween costumes. When autumn arrived, the five and dime could suddenly fill with masks, decorations, candy, and costumes that looked magical through a child's eyes. Companies such as Ben Cooper and Collegeville sold costumes in boxes with clear cellophane windows so the mask could stare directly at you. Inside might be a thin character smock and a molded plastic mask held to your face by a simple elastic band. The eye openings never seemed quite generous enough, and breathing behind the plastic could quickly become warm and uncomfortable. Yet on the shelf, those costumes promised instant transformation into a favorite character for one important night. The materials were simple and, by modern safety expectations, sometimes startling, but that did little to reduce their appeal at the time. Choosing one became part of the countdown to Halloween, just as important as deciding which streets would produce the best candy haul. For many children, seeing those cellophane window boxes today brings back the season faster than any modern costume aisle could. 14. The Christmas Wonderland. If the five and dime was colorful during an ordinary week, Christmas could transform it into something almost overwhelming. Store windows glittered, seasonal tables multiplied, and inexpensive decorations gave families countless ways to add something new to the holiday. Shiny bright glass ornaments could sit in compartmented boxes, while tinsel and bubble lights added sparkle that felt unmistakably mid-century. Greeting cards, small gifts, toys, wrapping supplies, and decorations turned practical errands into repeated opportunities for children to inspect Christmas treasures. For families watching every dollar, the variety store could also make holiday shopping feel possible without entering an expensive department store. Children could search for modest gifts they could afford themselves, giving them the rare pleasure of buying something secretly for a parent or sibling. In small towns, a locally operated Ben Franklin or regional variety store might carry the same emotional weight that Woolworth did elsewhere. The chain name mattered less than the ritual. Cold sidewalks outside, bright windows ahead, and Christmas waiting just beyond the door. 15. The cash register ding and brown paper bag. Eventually, every visit reached the counter, where the objects you had considered for so long finally became yours. Older mechanical cash registers were heavy machines of metal, keys, number displays, and a drawer that could announce itself with a physical bell. There were no barcode scanners chirping across a laser window, and no glowing touchscreen asking you to choose from a list of payment options. A clerk handled the transaction, gathered the purchases, and often sent them away in a simple craft paper bag. That bag might contain thread for your mother, candy for you, a small toy, greeting cards, or some completely ordinary household necessity. The contents were rarely important enough to become family heirlooms, yet the act of carrying that bag home could feel wonderfully satisfying. By the 1970s, the retail world was changing as discount chains expanded and many traditional variety stores faced growing pressure. Downtown shopping patterns changed too, and eventually many of the familiar names disappeared or became something very different. But memory has a strange way of preserving the smallest details. A bell, a paper sack, a spinning rack, or a warm counterstool. Maybe your store was Woolworth's, Kresge's, McCrory's, Grant's, Ben Franklin, G.C. Murphy, TG&Y, or another local name entirely. Maybe it had wooden floors and a lunch counter. Or perhaps yours was a later suburban version with fluorescent lights and open aisles. What mattered was that it belonged to your town, your childhood, and a time when shopping could still feel like an afternoon adventure. And somewhere in memory, that old 5 and dime may still be open, waiting behind a red sign and a street-facing window. The floor still creaks, the comic rack still turns, and you still have just enough change in your pocket to buy one small thing. What was the 5 and dime in your hometown? And what is the one thing inside it that you can still remember today?